Hey, welcome back to ZK MasterTech. Today we're in the country again at Trilogy Farms, back where we did the turbo on an 8370R. I had previously inspected their combine quite a long time ago, actually. I think it was after last fall, but we're just now getting to the repairs on this machine, so I really had to look through the inspection sheet and kind of read through it and figure out what all we needed to do, and it's a good thing I took really good notes. So we're back here on the farm. We're going to start doing the repairs on this machine, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the feeder house drum because it's getting dents in it where the chain rides. It's not super terrible, but I've let it go a couple years, I think, with these dents in it. So we're going to go ahead and replace the drum. We're going to replace the feeder house conveyor chain. We're going to replace the upper chain sprockets for that conveyor chain, the slip clutch, the mid-floor wear strips, and the feeder house drive chain. So we're going to try to tackle that today, and then we're going to move on to some other repairs. I know we're going to have to pull the separator drive out of this combine, so that'll be a kind of an interesting repair to show you guys. Going to be quite a bit of material on this machine, but I'm only going to try to hit the stuff that I haven't filmed before. I don't want to show you guys a bunch of stuff I've already done before, so I'll probably just try to hit the stuff that we've not covered before. Also, the customer is going to repair a bunch of the stuff himself, so there's a lot of stuff that he's going to do separately, but he's going to be here working with us while we're working on this machine. So if he's got any questions he needs to ask me, I can help him. Yeah, it ought to be fun. Let's get on this feeder house, and we're gonna like pretty much completely rebuild this feeder house, so let's check it out. You guys are going to get to enjoy the birds chirping all day again. These sparrows seem to like me here for some reason. So the first thing we did was we pulled the face plate off, and you have some Allen screws down here. Take a 6mm Allen, and if those don't break free and your Allen starts to slip, you can just heat those up with a little propane torch or some MAP gas for a little bit, and then they'll break free, because you do not want to strip those out. So we rotated the drum around to where we can get to the master links, and we've already got the chain broken. We loosened the tensioners on both sides to loosen the tension on the chain. So the only thing holding this drum in is this bolt back here. So we'll take these bolts out on both sides, and then we're going to take this forklift and the pallet, and we're gonna raise it up here to where we can roll that mid-floor assembly out far enough to set it on the pallet, and then get it out far enough to where we can get to the bolts to remove the drum, and then we'll replace the drum and put new bearings on it. Take those bolts out, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know it was.
Alright, so there's gonna be a little spacer coming behind that. You don't have to take it out. So this drum's got some dents in it where the chain rides, and if you get a big enough dent right where the chain rides, the chain will just start wearing through the high points of the dent, and eventually it'll wear completely through the drum. So we're replacing it because it's just got some dents where the chain rides, and that's usually caused from a rock going in there and hitting it really hard. So that's why we're going to change the drum. Josh has just got that bolt out of the other side, that's why it jumped. So now we should be able to pull this drum out onto this pallet here, and then we'll swap the drum out.
Yeah, but they don't fit through there. We gotta go up more. them.
over these little stops, and then it'll go down.
That's about a pint.
So here's the mid floor. So the only thing holding it in are those bolts back there that go into that hole, and then the front of the drum rides on a cam right here, which here's those cams. And so see, that's in the up position, that one's in the down position. So we just rolled that out onto the pallet, but we got a little problem here. These plates are broken. It's missing a huge chunk. The other side's broke too. So we're gonna have to put new arms in this as well as the bearings. So got a guy running to get me some arms because I wasn't anticipating replacing those just yet, but we'll get those and get the drum in. So we unbolt the arm. You got 418s there. You see this side is, these shouldn't move at all whenever you tap on them. So the welds are obviously busted around that arm. Pull that arm off. There you go. So we're robbing the bolts for the bearing. We're just going to leave that bearing in place. Okay, so we took the old drum out, got the new drum set on the forks, put new bearings in. That hex shaft is just one piece that goes all the way through the drum, and that's what those little end caps go onto. So we got new bearings on each side. Now we're just waiting on the end caps to get here. So we're going to go ahead and start working on the upper shaft sprockets. Here's our top sprockets. So you can see they're starting to get hooked pretty good. I mean, when they wear about halfway through that tooth, it's time to replace it. And we're going to be putting newer style sprockets in this that cut through the material a little better. So first thing we got to do is get these stripper plates out. I think there's 15mm bolts inside here. We'll take those stripper plates out, and then we'll undo the set screws and slide these outside sprockets inward. We'll unbolt the bearings, and I might have to take one support off the feed accelerator just to get a little bit extra room to swing that way. And I usually use a chain hoist from the bottom of the cab to kind of lift up on that shaft and help get that in and out of there. Okay, so we got all the stripper plates out. You got two big ones in the middle, and you got two little ones on the side. And what I do is I take out all the set screws. So there's 4 set screws in each one. 2 go into the keyway, and then there's 2 over here. One thing you want to pay attention to is all the sprockets are going to say non-gauge on the inside. So you want to make sure when you put new sprockets in, the non-gauge is on this side of each sprocket when you put it on there. I'm not exactly sure why they tell you to do that, but I do know they tell you in Service Advisor to make sure the non-gauge all faces the same direction. So I always look at the old ones and I put them on exactly like the old ones are. Also, you got to pay attention if there's any like dings in the shaft that you want to sand those down, because we got to move these sprockets inward, because we got to take the bearings and move them inward so we can get the shaft out. So I got the shaft sanded down. I had a pretty good booger on the left side, so I got it sanded down. Now I spray PB Blaster or Seafoam Deep Creep. Those are probably my 2 favorite. I spray it all around the sprocket, and I spray it in the holes where the set screws were and just let that kind of penetrate through. Then we're going to pry these over, but before you move the sprockets, I always take a tape measure and measure from here, measure to the middle of the sprocket, and then to the middle one, and then to the outside. And I write those dimensions down just to have a good point of reference to where I can, get those new sprockets centered as good as possible. So I just take note and measure that real quick before we start moving the sprockets. Now we're trying to get these sprockets to move. Get in. So we asked it nicely and it wouldn't move, so now we're not asking anymore. We're going to get the torch out. And I pre-sprayed water down in there, so we got water on standby just in case we catch something on fire. Now that we got those sprockets slid in, and boy were those suckers tight, but they, if they've been on there for a while, they're gonna fight you. So a lot of times you might as well just prepare on torching those bad boys. So got those moved in because we have to move the bearing housings in to get that shaft to release out of the feeder house. But that shaft goes all the way out to the end here where there's a slip clutch. So I took the cotter key off of the nut here, and then the nut was actually loose, and I'm just spinning this off by hand. And we can wiggle this guy off. Just like that. And then Josh just removed the bolts from the bearing houses. Spacer in here. Spacer. Alrighty. bolts out.
Yep.
So before we do that, I'm going to get a strap position to hold the weight on that so it doesn't just drop down, because if you take that right side, and move that bearing housing in, this thing's going to drop.
Okay.
So I like to support it with a strap because it's heavy. So we're going to work smarter, not harder. Okay, so I supported the upper shaft with a strap here, and then you take the bearing housings and pry them in as far as you can. Now, most of the time they don't move very far because there's a bunch of junk, you know, stuck down in here, and it can't move it on the shaft very well. So what I do is I take one feed accelerator support out. So it's just, you loosen one row of 15s, then you take out the next two. And then you can take that out, and then I just tighten the belt to where it'll stay, and then you can ratchet it up, because that has, in order to get this out, you have to go down out of the slot. The shaft has to go down out of the slot. See that little gap right there? So it's got to go down, and then it's got to go around like this, but that feed accelerator support and wear strips are in the way. So once you take out that one row, that allows you to get that up and out of there. You can drop these shafts out from the bottom, but I don't like doing it that way. I like doing it this way. So there's more than one way to skin the cats, what I'm saying, but this is just how I roll. So we'll take the shaft up, over, and then we'll have to point it out this way, because you got to pull the shaft completely out of here. Take the strap off. So we got the new sprockets on the bar, new bearings, getting it into place. There you go. Put in that hole. Yep. Up and over that piece there. There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go.
Now you got the belt lock down.
Now I do. There you go.
Gotta get mad at it.
I like it. Aggression. Where's your bolts? Mine is not cooperating.
No? Bars, up, down, strap.
There she goes.
Just had to hold your tongue right kind of deal.
I had to look at it.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't looking at it.
Would you just look at it?
Maybe. Here we go. You got her. Trigger. So we got the shaft in there. The sprockets are still loose. Bearings are bolted in. Got the feed accelerator support back in. Now you want to put your slip clutch on and tighten that down. And that'll set that shaft in the correct position where it needs to be. Then you can set your sprockets where they need to be. Okay, I got a new slip clutch on here. That old one was a little loose, so we got a new one on there. Got our cotter pin in place, and now we're going to set the sprockets where they need to be. Josh is getting the set screws in. 6 7/8. All right, we got the shaft locked down, got the stripper plates all back in. So the upper sprocket job is now done. Now we just put the mid-floor back in, and then we can run a new chain in this thing. All right, now we're gonna get the mid-floor installed. No, I'm crooked. Push it my way. There we go. Lower it down. Whoa. Whoa, it went way up.
There it went.
Push my way. Go down the forklift just a smidge. Whoa.
I'm not in. I gotta go down this long way.
Okay.
I gotta go down just a smidge.
There. Boom. Whoa. Don't want to go much further. Now we just need to get the bolts in the back. So now we got to pick up the rear of the mid floor so we can get these bolts started in there. Need you to pull back that way on the feeder house drum when we pick this up. You got to pull in the middle, pull it straight. Ready?
Tell me when.
Now, well, is that better?
Yeah.
Well, it got dark on us because it started raining. We're using a strap to pull this thing in. Okay, so my camera batteries died in the middle of that, and I didn't realize it, but basically we fed the chain up, we wrapped that strap around that top shaft, and we pulled until I got the three chain strands right up to the sprockets, and then we hooked it around the sprockets, and then we ran the strap down the top side inside the feeder house, and then pulled and pulled until the chain came down here at the drum. So now all we got to do is raise the feeder house, and then we can connect our master links and then adjust the chain. So we're getting the master links hooked up. And one thing you want to check when you're doing a new conveyor chain, so here's our tensioner over here. You want to make sure that these spacer can slide on that threaded rod. If you take that nut and spring off and you can't budge this, then this can't properly work like it's supposed to. If that spacer locks up on this threaded rod, then it can't move back and forth. And also, you want to make sure that your springs aren't broken like this one. See, so I didn't see it broken during the inspection because it was hiding behind this bracket right here. It's kind of hard to see in there. So when I took this spring off to make sure that these spacers would move, I noticed that spring was broken. So We'll get new springs in there tomorrow, but we can go ahead and get the chain hooked up, so that'll be all right. The other side, both sides of the spacers were locked up, so we just take the spacers off and then we clean the threads up real good with a wire brush so they can move, and that's what you want to make sure is good with that. So now we're going to pull this back shaft out, and it's got a O-ring that goes into the reverser and it's in. So we're going to pull this back shaft out to replace that O-ring. That off. Guide that back in. Guide that in the hole. That. Ta-da. Alright, so now we're going to replace the feeder house retainers. So if you've ever had your feeder house, when you raise it up all the way, it kind of cocks a little bit right at the top. Well, that's because these poly bushings they're called feeder house retainers are probably wore out right here. So I'm going to show you guys how to fix that. So we've got the feeder house lowered down all the way to the ground. You kind of want to put a little pressure on it so it keeps the feeder house shoved back into the frame a little bit. And you take the 30mm socket and a high torque gun. See how that moved out just a little bit? Take this one bolt out. And then you pull this guy out. See, this goes down into a slot and then it just rocks back and that bolt torques it in. And then you can pull the retainer out. See that? Quite a bit of wear difference between those two. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, but I don't know how much you think that is.
Quarter inch?
About a quarter inch or so. So if your feeder house is cocking whenever you're raising it up, you want to swap these out. And then I just make sure it's kind of fairly clean in there. Didn't look too bad.
Pry bar or something.
Hit it with a forklift. All right, so sometimes that feeder house, when you take that retainer out, it kind of falls down a little bit. And if you can't get that retainer back in, then you just take a forklift and just push on the feeder house a little bit, lift it up to where you can get this retainer back in and get your bolt in. Like that. Now we're just going to do the same thing to the other side. So here's the other side. It was actually broken. See that? So she was in pretty sad shape on that left-hand side. So we got that swapped out, and now the feeder house is tight and right. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of ZK MasterTech. I appreciate you guys watching. Showed you guys pretty much how to rebuild the feeder house on this S680 here. Stick around because in the next video I'm going to show you guys how to recondition the reel pump assembly, and we're also going to be pulling the separator drive out of this combine, and then we'll haul the separator drive to our shop to where we have all our special tools and everything, and we're going to rebuild that guy and then come back, reinstall the separator drive and the reel pump drive. So stick around for that. It's going to be fun.